And remind everyone that this meeting is video, voice recorded, and live streamed from the hdsb.ca website. I'd also like you to ask you to turn any devices to silent mode. I forgot to do that myself. Okay. So we have a couple of our three regrets this evening. Trustee Ann Harvey Hope, Trustee Mansour, and Vice Chair Al Harrison, who may be arriving later this evening. And I'd also like to note that Trustee Collard is filling in for Vice Chair Al Harrison in her absence. So I just wanted to mention the reason why Vice Chair Al Harrison is absent, and that is because this evening she is receiving a Paul Harris Fellowship from the local Rotary Club. And the criteria for people receiving this fellowship are those who demonstrate a shared purpose with the objectives and mission of the Rotary Foundation to build world understanding and peace. And when referring to the award, Tracy L. Harrison mentioned that she felt very humbled and that the fellowship will be her inspiration to do more. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we're very proud of Vice Chair Al Harrison and congratulate her. And I'd like to formally welcome the Brock University students in the back of the room. We would like to take a moment to honor the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawaddarun, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Oliver, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Is there any discussion on the agenda for this evening? Seeing none. All in favor of approving this evening's agenda? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none. We have no Inspire Award presentations, delegations, or presentations this evening. Okay, so now we are up to our consent agenda items. Are there any consent agenda items requiring discussion? Actually, I've been asked by Vice Chair Al Harrison to pull the administrative procedure report. Okay. Okay. So we're just going to note that, and I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for January 24th, 2018. Moved by Trustee Oliver, seconded by Trustee Pappen. So we're going to discuss the items at this moment. So what I'm suggesting, if there are, okay. So I have some direction from Vice Chair L. Harrison
On the admin procedure, right?
on the admin procedure for 2 of the items. So I welcome Principal Schoss to the desk and Superintendent Podrick. So the first question is about the violent threat or risk assessment, the VTRA, on page 24, regarding the safety plan. I'll just give you a second to hunt that down. Okay, so when do parents and or guardians become aware of the safety plan? Are they consulted in its development, and do they receive a copy?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair, safety plans on the back end of the VITRA. It's what results out of the VITRA and usually is a part of the return to school plan. Parents aren't necessarily consulted in the plan. They're not at the VITRA table as part of that process, but it is something that would be shared with them. They don't necessarily sign off on it because it's not, the terms sometimes aren't negotiable. It can be, I'll use an example of it. It could be like a bag search in the morning before coming into the school. They're usually things we need to have happen before. So they're certainly informed of it, but it isn't necessarily a collaboratively developed piece. Could be, and they could offer some input to it, but by policy it doesn't necessitate that. Don't know anything to add. And the format is really just using similar safety plans. The content can be different, but that we'd use for safety plans on other students as well.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on to another administrative procedure, does anybody else, in kind of a threaded fashion, have any questions regarding the VITRA as well? I see none, so I'm going to then ask about the exclusion on page 49. And the question is, how is this situated with progressive discipline?
Through the chair once more, it isn't positioned within or it's outside of progressive discipline in that exclusions are not disciplinary. It is an alternative form. It's a way to press pause on a very difficult case. It's a different non-disciplinary way of addressing it. So it isn't typically voiced as a progressive discipline path for that reason.
If I could just add, the reason why it is in its own administrative procedure now is because it used to lie in the progressive discipline procedure, which was confusing when we told people it wasn't discipline. So now we've pulled it out. So it's still within the safe and accepting schools realm, but it's no longer part of progressive discipline.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more questions on this, thank you very much. Go ahead, Director Miller.
I just have a comment. And it's not for Superintendent Podrick, it's just so trustees know, Principal John Schoss is our expert on safe schools. And I just want to publicly compliment him because he works very closely with all our schools, some more than others, in helping our principals navigate the tricky stuff of keeping individual students safe and keeping the communities of the schools safe as well. So I just wanted to publicly thank Principal Schoss.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda items and receive the information items. So I'm going to call the question. So all those in favor? And Donna, if you're online. There she is. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now up to our ratification action items. Vice Chair Collard, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, we do. We have one item. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board receive the 2018 goals as set out by the Director of Education and that the goals be posted on the board's website. And I so move.
Seconded by Trustee Graves. Is there any discussion at all? Seeing none. All those in favor?
We're going to get a 30-second delay from Donna because there's a delay.
Yeah. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So we have no action items for this evening. And we are now up to communications to the board, beginning with the trustee report from Trustee Metropolitansky.
Thank you. First of all, Trustee Mansour sends his regrets. He has an exam tomorrow, so he's busy studying for that. We just wanted to report on our Senate meeting, which took place last Tuesday, which was the 16th, I believe. So we talked about a couple of things at the Senate meeting. Firstly, we started planning or discussing the Halton Youth Leadership Symposium, which we run. It's a tradition now. We do it every single year. We introduced that to the senators. We're thinking of doing it once again like we did last year for elementary students, hoping to have it at Sheridan sometime in May, later May. We're trying to figure out those logistics now with our staff advisors. In the elementary portion of the Student Senate meeting, we talked about their situation with student councils within our elementary schools. We conducted an informal survey of the elementary senators where we had them fill out a series of questions like, do you have a student council? If not, what other organizations do you have in place? Questions about the structure of their student council, like what grade levels were represented, whether they were elected or appointed, etc. We found that over half of the senators, just over 60%, reported they didn't have a student council at their school, and fewer than half of those who did said that they have elections. So most did not have student representatives elected within their schools for their student council. We do recognize, though, that many of those schools have other organizations which perhaps may do leadership activities or take the place of a student council, like they might run school events. But many of the senators expressed a strong concern that they wanted for there to be a clear organization, like there is in most secondary schools, that's devoted to being a student parliament or a student council. So what we've kind of taken to working on now with our elementary senators is looking at some guiding principles as to if we were to create our ideal student council or student parliament, how would it be structured? And then seeing what we can do with those guiding principles or that structure, because we were pretty shocked by hearing that most of them do not have a student council or a student parliament in their school. In terms of the secondary portion of the meeting, one of the major pieces of discussion was about the role of homework in our schools. I brought up these comments at our committee of the whole meeting, but just to bring them up publicly again, the secondary students overwhelmingly felt that while homework was relevant and there's certainly a role for it in high school in the day-to-day work that they're assigned, they were extremely concerned by the amount of work that they are being given during the winter break in particular and holidays in general, to the point at which they feel like those holidays are no longer really breaks for them, and it oftentimes causes mental health problems for students, they felt, when they aren't able to take a break from their schoolwork, when they aren't able to enjoy the time with their family or the holiday. So they wanted us to raise those concerns. And we're just going to continue discussing some of these issues moving on forward with our next Senate meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Extensive and wonderful as always. Okay, there are no action items for the February 7th board meeting. The next information item is number 531, the Annual Accessibility Plan, Report 18014 on page 57 of the board package. Oh, did I miss that?
You're being very efficient this evening, so efficient. Mary Marshall is still on her way down from her office. So she will be joining us shortly. Actually, I'll move this way. I will start in, and she can join us as we go. I would like to start out by acknowledging the leadership of Sari Taha and Mary Marshall in this work as the co-chairs for our accessibility coordinating committee. Come on up, Mary. I was saying they're being very efficient this evening. So.
Took you so long, Mary.
It's a long way upstairs.
The report is before you, and what we'll do at this point is just touch on and remind you of a few pieces, and then we'll take any questions that you may have. So earlier this year, Mary Jane Farish, who was Mary Marshall's counterpart in partnership with Sari Taha, shared our initial draft of the multi-year accessibility plan, 2017-2022, with the trustees, and then of course with SEAC as well. At that time, we got some initial feedback in terms of what might be incorporated into our plan moving forward. This plan essentially frames our work over the next 5 years and builds upon the existing plan that is in place. Likewise, there is a clear alignment with the goals and with the strategies that are contained within our multi-year plan as a school board that guides the work of this board. So the accessibility plan 2017-2022 includes specific goals that address student, staff, and system, and builds on the work identified and completed within our prior plan. And again, it outlines the organization's strategy to meet the requirements under the regulation. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act requires that school, that's Ontario Human Rights, training is a continued component. A protocol for inclusive meeting and gatherings, a design is in the development stage at the moment for our board, and ongoing training for staff through the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, which is inclusive of a competing rights legislation. Again, we have shared this document with both our elementary and secondary principals associations for information, as well as SEAC, and now with you, the Board of Trustees, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have with respect to our direction going forward.
Director Miller?
Thank you, Chair Drabens. I just want to make an editorial comment about this. This is an extremely important report. Very, very important report. I mean, I know there's legislation around AODA compliance for 2025 and so on, but this is an important report, and the actions of this board have been great and have been significant over many years and continue to get this. We have many of our students who have accessibility challenges, and it's incumbent upon us to ensure that we get those barriers and those challenges out of the way so that these students can focus on their achievement, focus on their well-being. And I would ask everybody in this room and anybody watching on a computer, just look around in your local communities and see how many buildings, how many shops, how many of those are not accessible to those people with challenges, regardless of what their challenge may be. It might be a physical barrier for wheelchairs, or they have low vision or hearing. And I think we need to continue to work on this, and every one of us has to be vigilant and diligent in making sure that we provide accessible buildings for our students, their parents, and our community. And indeed, it's somewhat of an embarrassment that this particular admin center has accessibility challenges. and we need to rectify that as well. So I applaud General Manager Taha, Principal Marshall, and Superintendent Etoff for this report. I think it's a very, very important report. And I wanted to comment because sometimes these reports come as almost routine. I don't think we can consider this routine. I think we have to put this out front and center on how we are trying to ensure that those with challenges we're meeting those challenges and supporting these people.
Thank you. And we have a speaker.
Thank you for bringing this report. I know that a lot of work goes into this. And my question is, when do you expect the updated multi-year accessibility plan to be publicly available on the website?
We have it ready to go, so through the chair. So, again, as of tomorrow, our plan is to upload it onto our website, where the current one is located, and it will simply be replaced.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so seeing no more speakers, I actually have, I have a new speaker, Trustee Amos.
Thank you. Seeing the importance of this report and the fact that we just don't want to accept it, is this something that we should be making sure that we as a board have it on the front headliner, that it's updated, and maybe have an actual media release going out about, because that we've updated it and we're working towards the goals of the towards the final goals? I mean, I just feel if we want to make it the community aware of the great things that we are doing to move forward, we need to actually make them aware of it.
Through you, Chair Gerbens, to Trustee Amos, I think that's an excellent idea, and I look to Superintendent Etoff, who has a dual responsibility of communications as well.
Have a bit of an in there. So. Yes, no, we certainly accept that that feedback, and I like the idea of our one of our website banners that would be up for a while, to kind of advertising and bring people back to this important work that's going on in our system, and to be mindful of its existence on our website.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, I do have a few questions from Vice Chair Al Harrison, actually. Where should questions be directed to? Should families or anyone else need additional information? Has all of the consultation taken place via SEAC, or have people with disabilities also been consulted directly as per bullet 2?
So I'll answer the first part, and then I'll pass it over to my trustee cohorts here. In terms of where requests should be directed, where the report is posted on the website at the present time, it asks individuals to contact the director's office, and we would continue to request that they do that. Really, for the reason of the requests might be quite varied. It might be a personal request around an accessibility concern of a personal nature, whether it's a staff member or a community member, student, family, and therefore that would be directed accordingly. Whereas if it's a more broader concern with respect to the plan itself, then obviously there might be other individuals that may need to be contacted as well. So it's best that they contact the director's office, then they would then field those questions out to the appropriate individuals, whether it be communications or equity or individuals on the committee themselves.
Response to the second question. The committee itself, the Accessibility Coordinating Committee, is made up of a variety of members from all the corporate and academic departments, as well as a SEAC representative. There's also a and trustee representation as well. Thank you. We also have an individual on that committee who represents a disabled group, and so that voice is there. The draft plan went out to SEAC in the spring for consultation and feedback and revisions. It was adjusted and adapted during the summer and through final vetting with SEAC in December. SEAC provides the conduit to all the different agencies and organizations to ensure that those voices are heard in the report. And so we consult with them on a frequent basis, and they also sit and have a representative on the committee.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing and all the work that went into putting this together. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Next is the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Dravance. I spoke about it at the last board meeting, and then spent about an hour at committee of the whole speaking about the administrative review report from Margaret Wilson. And in there's a few recommendations. And the recommendations, we spoke about the importance of this. The primary recommendation was that we would carry on, that there were some procedural issues, but they were not material to the decision. However, those recommendations have to be implemented. They have to be addressed. So to that end, at committee of the whole, it came out that we would develop a matrix showing what the recommendation was, the responsibility for that recommendation, who would have that recommendation comply, who would develop the compliance with that recommendation, and we've added an approximate timeline. So we've developed a matrix on that with the different recommendations, the people, the staff or trustees responsible, and when the compliance with the recommendation would be met. We're not going to put it out publicly yet, because all trustees have not seen it and had the opportunity to comment. However, it will be made public at the next board meeting, which is the beginning of February. We'll make that out so the public can see the recommendations, see who's responsible, or what group of people is responsible for working on that recommendation, and approximately when that would be done. Okay? Summer school locations. Associate Director Bogue.
Thank you, Director Miller. I'm fully attentive. Summer school locations, this year we have looked at doing some planning for this summer, and in Burlington in particular, there will be one change that we are proposing, and that would be to run summer school instead of at LB Pearson at Hayden. We actually talked about this for the last couple of years, in fact, to a larger site that's fully air-conditioned and that sort of thing. Most of the other summer school locations will remain similar to last summer, but the one change will be in Burlington. So we wanted trustees to have a heads up on that.
This evening, the trustees, well, there were a number of administrative procedures brought forward. They were all around safe schools, and it's important that the public be aware that our staff, these are significant. They're about safe schools and risk assessments and violent threat risk assessments and all those kinds of things. Superintendent Podreberic and his staff from Safe Schools will be conducting I wouldn't say workshops, but we'll be meeting with all principals and vice principals to go over these admin procedures so that all our administrators will familiarize themselves with them. I want it noted that these procedures have been around for some time. They've been edited and updated. It's not like this is the first time they're here. They've been around for some time. So I thought it was important that trustees understand the communication plan, because we have dozens and dozens and dozens of admin procedures in this board. They're not always, we'll be frank, they're not always communicated, and everybody's not familiar with them all. But these ones are highly significant. So that's the plan. So that I don't know if you want to be specific. Do you have your plan?
Well, yeah, I can add a bit more. A good deal of the review with administrators will be this month at a family of schools. Will take about an hour. And for those newer or feeling that like a deeper session, about 2 weeks after that, we'll offer a full day or half day on just to go more in depth into them. So it'll be a little bit of a choose your own adventure approach.
Thank you. The last item I have on the director's report, this January 27th, or all January 27th, but this one is a highly significant day, but I'm going to refer to Superintendent Etoff to explain what the day is.
Thank you. We put out a news release today officially acknowledging and recognizing our commitment as a school board to equity and to an inclusion and to stand up against injustice. Specifically, January 27th is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we've put together just two of many examples across our system of the type of learning that's taking place in our schools across our system, with respect to learning about the injustices done, the reasons why these occurred, and also discussing how we can demonstrate positive leadership and advocacy with respect to moving forward in a much more positive direction. So we're proud of the work that we've done as a school board, and we're proud that we're one of a number of schools that are that is going to be one of a number of school boards that's going to be recognized at a very important conference this weekend on January 27th.
Thank you, Superintendent Etoff. And I just want to add a couple comments around that. I have been to Birkenau and Auschwitz twice, and it's difficult to describe how you feel when you're at these places. You know, the words you use, it's horrific what went on there. And the two times I was there, I was, and the people I was with were moved to silence. Both times I was at there. And I think the Holocaust Remembrance Day is a highly significant day for that reason, because we cannot forget what happened not that long ago. And unfortunately, in some cases, I don't know if we have not remembered well enough is the way I would describe it, because in the mid-90s, there was the Rwanda genocide, and there was also in former Yugoslavia. I think we have to keep reminding ourselves of the significance of these days, and us as educators, more importantly, and that includes the Board of Trustees. We have to keep reminding ourselves that one of the paramount duties that we have as educators is to ensure that our kids, our students, our children understand what happened, why it happened, and how we can prevent it from happening again. So I just had a few comments on that. That's the end of my director's report.
Thank you very much, Director Miller. Okay, next is communications from the chair, and I have a couple of things. So last week, myself, Trustee Amos, Trustee Graves, Trustee Daniele, the director, and several staff, superintendents, attended a school in Milton with the mayor of Milton and the Minister of Education, where she made the announcement that the Halton District School Board will be receiving funding for a school in southwest Milton and another school in northeast Oakville, and also funding for daycare spots within those schools. So she was making an announcement for her riding, which is Milton, North Oakville, North Burlington. So we're all very pleased with the ministry and appreciate the support to improve the learning environments for our students. And the second item is we were CC'd on a letter to the Assistant Deputy Minister, Student Support and Field Services Division at the Ministry of Education from the chair of SEAC at Grand Erie District School Board regarding the pilot to improve school-based supports for students with autism spectrum disorder. Essentially, it is requesting that EAs have access to the 40 hours of online training, even though they are outside of the pilot. I was wondering if I could ask Ms. Gortmaker to add this letter to the minutes. It's been added to our trustee correspondence folder already. I'd also like to ask Superintendent Zonnefeld if we are currently part of the pilot that the letter talks about, and if not, if he sees a benefit, if staff could access this training.
Thank you. Through the chair to trustees, we're certainly aware of the pilot by the ministry. The ministry did not invite, didn't I guess, make an open invitation to boards to participate, but instead approached boards and did so because they wanted representation from a variety of perspectives. So English, French, public, Catholic, rural, urban, etc. So we weren't approached to be part of the pilot through that process. We certainly value training for our staff. I would suggest, from my knowledge of the pilot, that while the training it's being provided by the Geneva Center for Autism, which is based in Toronto, while that training I'm sure will be very valuable, the nature of this is that it's a pilot. So they are, the approach of this is to provide the training. There are other aspects of the pilot as well, and to see the value in terms of the outcome for students. So at the end of the pilot, they may determine that this indeed is the appropriate training that should be provided, and look at how to do that for other boards across the province, or it may be some other training or in some other some other manner. So I think it might be a value as a board for us to wait and see the outcome of the pilot in just deciding how to go forward.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Zonnefeld. And we are up to Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Durant. Sorry, I forgot to mention this in my director's update. There's a student at White Oaks, Abby Robitaille, who won the CBC Student Writing Contest. The contest was to make a prediction of what life in Canada would be like in 150 years. There were 2,500 entries, and last week, Abby read her winning entry on the CBC program Q. So, well done, Abby.
That's great news. So now we're up to committee reports. Yeah, sorry, Sorry, I didn't see you. Trustee Amos.
I also wanted to share that there was a student from Falgarwood who also made it to the short list for the finals. So we were well represented as a board at both panels. So.
Oh, that's excellent. So we're on to committee reports. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you, the SEAC subcommittee dealing with the revisions to the Spec Ed plan for next year had our first meeting with Superintendent Zonnefeld and staff. It was very productive. We got about halfway through the document and the suggested changes made by staff, and had good dialogue, some really good conversation about the suggested changes, and look forward to the next meeting next week.
Trustee Oliver.
Through you, Chair, I'd like to provide an update on the meeting of the Special Education Review Committee that took place this morning. At that meeting, we reviewed feedback from staff, parents, and association representatives received through focus groups and key informant interviews.
with a focus on the 3 categories of exceptionalities: autism, learning disabilities, and giftedness. The topics of discussion included the referral process, identification process, placement process, communication, assistive technology, and support in the classroom, specifically the development and implementation of individual education plans and the level of support that students receive in the classroom. And we also reviewed the participants' suggestions for improvement. Secondly, we looked at Ontario Ministry of Education procedures, policies, and regulations that are directly related to referral, identification, and placement of elementary students for special education programs and or services. And we did that in light of the feedback that we received from parents, staff, and association reps through the focus groups and key informant interviews. And so as a result, a subcommittee has been formed to come together and work through developing some preliminary recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver. Okay, I have a committee report. So the chairs, co-chairs, and vice chairs of the standing committees met briefly to discuss the status of items to bring to committee of the whole. Vice Chair Al Harrison and I will follow up with Director Miller to help with scheduling and possible staff support for bringing these items forward. Okay, now on to trustee questions and comments. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to report that last week I had a chance to participate in Frankfurter Day at Park Public School. And I bring that forward tonight because it's part of Toonie Tuesday, which is, of course, in support of the Halton Learning Foundation. And in terms of the Halton Learning Foundation receiving support from schools, already $8,000 plus has arrived into the HLF on behalf of the schools that are actively engaged in supporting the activities of the HLF. I know that next week at the Committee of the Whole, we will be getting a fulsome report by Leslie Mansfield, and I look forward to that because there's just some wonderful news to share in the sense of the breadth and depth of support that our students are receiving from the Halton Learning Foundation. To date, for example, a total of 597 students have received support, and at this rate, we will be on track for probably supporting about 1,100 students this year. The support of those students at this time is $162,000. Now, in addition to that, a further $100,000 will be spread out amongst all of the schools that put in a request for program support. So all in all, to be said, I look forward again, as I've said, that Leslie Mansfield report next week will be very fulsome and very, very positive. But it really does point to a growing need, which is being experienced by the HLF. The ask is up about 30% this year. And so in closing, I would ask that those schools out there who have not yet embarked on a Toonie Tuesday project or some sort of support that way, please do so. And I might also add that soon, coming to a mailbox near you or perhaps via internet, there will be a request once again for the payroll deduction program. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Collard.
Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, we had the announcement regarding the movement of daycares from Pearson to Brant Hills and from Bateman to Frontenac. And I've had a couple of questions from the community about that I'm hoping I can get some information on tonight. The first question is with respect to parking, specifically with respect to Frontenac, because they already have a very full parking lot and they're concerned that this will become an issue with the addition of the daycare. So the question is, will they be enhancing the parking lot?
Capital funding traditionally hasn't allowed for parking spaces. Having said that, we'll have to dig in. We were not that far into the site plans. We could put it in if we felt it was a big piece. I will say childcare traditionally doesn't need a lot of spots. Their drop-off and pickup times are very separate from the school. So it usually isn't a drain on existing parking. We do need a set amount for the staff of the childcare, but that's typically under 10 spots. So if we feel it's a big deal, there are provisions for it. But usually it really is site specific. So it's a factor we'll bring forward in the planning of Frontenac.
Thank you. And then the second question I had, people were a little bit confused by the announcement. They wanted to know if the total number of spaces at Brant Hills and at Frontenac, they wanted to know the incremental difference in the number of spaces. And I've been given the numbers for Frontenac. I was wondering if I could also have the numbers for Brant Hills just so that I can report back.
Yes, through the chair. Pearson will be licensed when they move to Brant Hills. They currently have 32 in the morning, 32 in the afternoon. It's a part-time program, so families are always coming and going. They can be licensed up to 48. That's a ministry license number. Whether the provider has 48 in there is really up to them, and they're not viewing themselves as a growth-oriented service, but they will have space up to 48 in total. So that would be a net growth.
Thank you very much. I have another question if anyone else is on the list.
No one else is on the list.
Okay. My other question is regarding lunchtime supervisor training. I've had a question from the public about the training that our lunchtime supervisors are receiving with respect to anaphylaxis.
Thank you. Yes, there are a number of training modules that the board partnered with the OESC. They were created some time ago, and our lunchroom supervisors take that training, and it includes anaphylaxis. In addition, all staff are trained annually at one of the first staff meetings of the year, and that would include lunch hour supervisors.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I meant to do this earlier, but it's just as appropriate now. My community is absolutely thrilled to have the funding announcement for the new Northeast Oakville Elementary School. And I just noticed in the capital report that it's supposed to be built for 2020, and I just wanted to have confirmation it's actually supposed to be 2019.
Through your chair, Drabans, to Trustee Amos, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Graves.
Oh, thank you. Just a comment and then a question just on the capital announcement last week. It was indeed very exciting. Exciting for Milton because we received approval for Milton number 11. And also exciting because it was the first time we had seen Indira Naidu-Harris in her new role as Minister of Education. So it was a bit of a two-part celebration in that way. So that was exciting. And then I've just noticed, so there is a capital report in our document, but it wasn't on the agenda anywhere. So there's no place to comment on it, which is it there? 3.2.5, I don't have on my list. I always work from the online document. I pull it right off the website. So, I was looking for it just somewhere. Anyway, the only thing I would have, yeah. Sure, that's fine. The only thing I would have said on it is I'm looking forward to seeing Milton number 11 and all of these new and exciting projects on the next monthly capital update. Thank you.
Do the trustees want to address that capital report now?
Through you, Chair Drabans, to Trustee Graves, to all trustees, let's bring this back the next board meeting, and we'll bring some our facilities people with us in case you have specific questions. I mean, our new superintendent of facilities, David Bogue, is still getting up to speed with some of the things. So, but we'll bring some helpers with us next week in case you have specific questions.
Thank you, Director Miller. And we have Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, and actually this builds on the question around lunchtime supervisors. I just wanted to clarify. So anybody who's recruited as a lunchtime supervisor is able to obtain an online training module, and that would address not just anaphylaxis, but also any kind of first aid, choking, that sort of thing. And is there a protocol for whom to contact and how to do that in the school? So to seek additional support from a teacher, or would our lunchtime supervisors know how to do that?
So I can speak to the first question. There are several online training modules that are required by staff annually. In terms of first aid, the 3 A's, anaphylaxis, asthma, and asbestos, are one of the 3 of the trainings that are required every year. An email goes out to all staff at the beginning of September. Various different types of staff. We now have a system that monitors it electronically. If you're asking about, is there someone that they can seek support with on how to do the training, that would be the principal. If you're asking, is there someone to seek support with if they ever have to implement the training, I would have to refer that to, I guess, Associate Director Bogue.
I wonder whether Superintendent Zonneveld may be better to respond.
I will catch the ball and respond. To trustees, I guess an expectation and the communication and training that those supervisors would receive is that sort of a general would be that certainly those student supervisors should respond to the needs of the students as appropriate in the moment, and ask for assistance from other staff. So that would look different than in each school based on the configuration of the yard, the setting they're in. For example, if they're in a kindergarten classroom, there would be other staff next door in other classrooms. Whereas if they're, for example, in a junior hallway, they may be looking for support from the next hallway, or calling through the school PA system, etc. So what that looks like varies by school and by their assignment. So the training would be specific to when you have responded or are responding, then how do you seek assistance and support from other staff?
So just to be clear, this kind of training and protocol would be available to lunchtime supervisors who are not teachers or staff at the school?
Correct. That's part of their orientation when they sign on and become staff in that capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more speakers, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. You scared me for a second there, Trustee Gray. And seconded by Trustee Amos. All those in favor?
Someone let those Brock kids go that know that this is an odd one.
I already told them. And that passes unanimously. We are adjourned.